So is Sir Duncan the Tall actually a knight? Well, let's discuss. Now, this is a question that's existed since the publication of the first novella, The Hedge Knight, because just like in the TV show, there is some possible funny business going on with Dunk's answers when he's being asked about his newly achieved knighthood. So let's compare and contrast how this funny business kind of presents itself in the novella versus how it presents itself in the show, because they are slightly different, and I feel like the show makes it a little more blatant what that possible answer is. Now, the first big discrepancy that we get about Dunk's knighthood comes in the same place that it does in the show, where he is talking to the steward of Ashford, trying to sign up for the list so he can participate in the tourney, and he is asked about, like, oh, who knighted you? Where were you knighted? Blah, blah, blah. And he tells the steward that, you know, he was a squire for Sir Arlen, and that as Sir Arlen was dying, he called for his sword, and he touched it to each of his shoulders, and he said some words, and then said that now you're a knight. And that's the story as Dunk presents it, and he never verbally or really internally out and out says that is a lie. However, there is a big issue with that story as it is presented, and that is in the aftermath of him burying Sir Arlen at the beginning of the novella, as he's, you know, going to that inn to get some food, as he's on his way to Ashford, he is thinking about his options. Like, what is he gonna do with his life? Because all he's ever known was, you know, the streets of Flea Bottom as a kid, and then the last however many years he's just been with Sir Arlen. So, like, the life of the Squire of the Hedge Knight is all that he knows. And so internally, he thinks, well, like, I could try to find another Hedge Knight to squire for, so that's one of my options, or I can just go to Ashford and try to compete in the tourney. Now, this obviously presents a logical inconsistency, because if you have already been made a knight, rather dramatically too, as your pseudo-father figure is dying on the side of a road and with his last strength lifts his own longsword to knight you, you would think that that is, like, you know, your life now, because he literally used his dying breath to do it, and, well, you're a knight, so why would you go back to being a squire for another night unless you weren't a knight? Now, I will say there is another big indicator of this that we get towards the end of the story that I'm not going to say here for people who are only watching the television show as of now, but I'll just say there is another indicator later on where he has a thought about being stressed out, you know, surrounding his own knighthood. If you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone else, I'm just keeping it vague. You know, I'm being nice, okay? And honestly, within the context of the books, this is something that I really kind of love when it comes to this question, because it is never directly addressed, and it's avoided in a very, like, intriguing way, because you need to remember that this novella, a lot of it is just, because it's from Dunk's point of view, it's a lot of Dunk's interiority. It's a lot of his, like, internal thoughts that you are following along and reading. And so it's very interesting the way that he will, like, kind of start to have a thought, and then it'll kind of just dissipate, and he'll, like, avoid voicing certain things. But, like, the lead up all leads you to feeling like you have an idea of, like, maybe what some of these anxieties are about. Now, as I said a second ago, the TV show makes this question of Dunk's legitimacy as a knight, I think, a lot more apparent, and it makes the fact that he's probably not, you know, actually quote-unquote a knight a little more obvious, and that's by including a visual cue to the robin during the shitting scene. Now, in the book, when he's talking to the steward and he's telling him, you know, he's weaving this yarn, he does also mention, when the steward asks him, hey, did anyone witness this, you know, very dramatic knighting on the side of the road? And Dunk is like, no, there was just a robin in a tree that I heard. So, in the show, I think it's very interesting and very telling that they include that robin, but they include it after Sir Arlen is buried. And I do think that that makes a much larger hole in his story for us as the viewer, which has really crystallized this question in all of our heads. And honestly, I think it's a great idea to do it that way. Because again, this is a different medium. Books and TV, they are not the same. You can't do certain things in each one of them as well as you can do in the other. I've talked about this so many times before that interiority is so difficult to express in television because it is a visual medium, and then you are left with all these kind of shitty options. Do I do a voiceover? Do I have him I don't know, just monologue to himself? But the show in general, I will say, just to go off on a tangent, does a pretty good job of translating his interiority and making it exterior, either by having him, I love how they have him talk to the horses. I think that is a brilliant way of expressing that while also giving it that very solid feeling of being Dunk, and then turning a lot of his internal thoughts into conversations with other characters. So what we've done here is take one of the great internal mysteries that we have with Dunk, because we hear him kind of dance around this idea, this secret guilt, this secret shame in his thoughts all throughout these novellas. And they have externalized it. They found a way to cue in the audience to oh, there's a visual cue to a lie. It's there. I can see it. Ugh, Dunk, I think I know what you're doing here. But while he is technically probably not, a legitimate knight, I do think that is an important theme that George, the writer, is exploring here, and that is what makes a knight. Is it the vows? Is it that you took a sacred oath? Is it that another knight made you a knight? Is it that a septon anointed you with holy oil and you stood vigil for 24 hours in a sept? Is that what knighthood is? Or is knighthood what you do? People talk about all the time the thematic parallels between Dunk and Brienne of Tarth. Not just because their stories have a lot of huge similarities, but also because, well, Brienne's very tall and she might have a very tall ancestor. Fun fact. But with these two characters, we have this idea of someone who is behaving as you would hope a knight behaves, someone who embodies those ideals that have unfortunately kind of fallen to the wayside with a lot of the knights of Westeros. A lot of the knights of Westeros do not have, the sense of honor, the sense of chivalry or whatever that they should have, but they use their position as a way of enriching themselves, as a way of overpowering those around them. Meanwhile, you have two characters who are embodying everything you want a knight to be, who are the legitimate, real deal item, and they're technically not, for whatever reason. Whether it's because they're a woman, whether it's because they never got knighted by another knight. But does it matter? No! Dunk is a knight because Dunk acts like a knight. Dunk does what a knight should do. He embodies what a knight should be, and therefore, he's a knight, okay? So yes, there are lingering questions will this ever get rectified? Will he find a way to be properly knighted one day? Who knows? Maybe. Couldn't tell you. But I ultimately don't give a shit. I really don't, because as far as I am concerned, if I need a knight to help me, to save me, to do what needs to be done, this is the guy I want to call. This guy right here. So yeah. Anyway, please let me know what you want me to talk about next, whether it's from the show, whether it's from the novella, whether it's from something else from A Song of Ice and Fire. Please drop it down in the comments. Make sure you're liking, pressing all the buttons, do the things, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, have a good night. Bye-bye.